Hey guys, good morning. It's Too Tall Tom here. I wanted to talk to you guys about the kind of like the state that World of Warcraft's in, um, and stuff. It's kind of I'm really bad when it comes to scripting videos. It's gonna be off the cuff. The main crux of me making this video is I've been watching a lot of Bellular videos, Asmongold, stuff like that. A lot of people talking about the state that Battle for Azeroth is in currently. Before I get too far into things, I know um, I usually don't get very many views on my videos, but if Asmongold does end up somehow finding this small video, I know that he typically does like to see the armories of people, so that way it can kind of put a perspective and context towards the opinions that people have towards the game. So let me make sure that you guys can kind of see this. Let me resize it here a little bit. So this is my main character right now. The character that you see on screen is just my Death Knight. This is my main character, Paladin Titan Knight from Per Outmore. So I'm sitting at about 370 item level. I'm a progression raider, but not in the terms of like a mythic raider. I've never been in a guild that's really been set up for mythic. I know that mythic is it's cut like mythic raiders are cut from a different cloth. I'm comfortable in progressing through heroic and getting to a place where I can adequately say, I've achieved what I want to achieve. Um, so let me see, view raid history. Really bad at finding this. So right now, I'm only 6 of 8 heroic. Um, the reason that I'm only 6 of 8 heroic for Aldir is, and I think this kind of it may explain a portion of why people have been quitting the game and not returning, probably more so in larger numbers than we even saw in uh, the other colloquial known worst expansion WoW's ever announced or created or launched, which is Warlords of Draenor. So here's Mythic you can ignore because obviously I did Mythic now that it's easier to clear, and I want the transmog. I'll admit I didn't really touch Trial of Valor due to some personal issues with a guildmate passing away. It was, while I really enjoyed Legion, it was a very uh, struggling time for me to get the motivation to play the game. So we did. I don't think I did ahead of the curve on. No, I was pretty much normal Emerald Nightmare. And then when it got into Nighthold, that's when I started dipping my feet into the new heroic system. I did get AOTC on Tomb of Sargeras, but the issue is, and I really agree with Asmongold with this, is that raids are becoming so complicated, and Kil'jaeden was really, really bad for this, where they're not only are they complicated, but one person's screw up can cause the entire group of, say, 30 people to have to call a wipe. So it's not only gotten to the fact or to the point where you need to be a flawless person when it comes to raiding, which I'm sure there's many mythic raiders that, will look at someone doing, say, heroic or, say, normal progression and laugh at the fact that some people are still struggling with the mechanics for that. But we have to remember that everyone plays at a different level. Not everyone has the aptitude to eventually work their way up to mythic rating. There's some people that, like myself, like I can be competent in a heroic environment, but I don't know if I would have the willpower to stay for the massive amount of work that would take to be competitive and progress in a mythic environment. So I did end up getting AOTC for the last 2 raids of Legion. This raid progress is all like this is all skewed by farming after the fact, so there's no point in seeing that stuff. As far as how long I've been playing the game, I've been playing the game for roughly since about mid Burning Crusade. Let me see the achievement just for some. Asmongold makes seems so easy finding these parts, but I'm sure he's done a lot of research to see the type of uh, the the type of opinions some people have. So events. So here is the oldest achievement I have, 2009 Spirited Competition. So that was when they first were adding the inklings of what at that point I would argue was an appropriate change. The Spirited Competition, if I remember correctly, that was during the Olympics for 2009. I believe that was the Beijing Olympics, and it was when they first introduced cross-realm battlegrounds, which I can understand that because like before then, it's kind of a toss-up uh, because they allowed you to, queue across all servers, which allowed you to kind of uh, get into battlegrounds faster and whatnot. But it kind of that was when it started making small cracks in the community. Because at that point, if prior you were to do a battleground, you'd be playing with people on your server. So let's say you had a time in Warsong Gulch where you'd grab the flag and you were solo running it, and there was someone that was really like just right on your tail the whole time, and you knew that by the time you got to like the flag room or whatnot, you wouldn't be able to keep the flag because the other team also had it. You wouldn't be able to appropriately defend it in a way that you'd be able to capture it at the end. Well, what if one person out of the whole team who was going to attack or maybe sitting in the middle saw that you needed help and they defended you for the entire game, and you it's that would create a bond with someone. And it's gone now that it's all cross server because that can still happen to you. But unless you make the effort to add them on BattleNet, you'll exit that game, you'll never see that person again. It's the same thing with LFR. It's the same thing with dungeons. You're being put into groups where the responsibility and having to basically take responsibility for your actions in the dungeon is no longer a factor in the game. There's no longer an incentive to be, hey, and I know Preach has been kind of struggling with this in one of his latest videos about the toxicity of the new player base. But really, Blizzard has not only created an environment for that, they've also created the tools to allow that type of um, that type of social interactions to thrive. Because now people aren't held accountable for the things that they've said. They're not accountable for the actions that they take in game. And that's really what's been missing from the game. So, and I think this kind of leads to the general social disconnect that we're seeing in World of Warcraft now. Like, really, what incentive is there anymore to join a guild? My recent experience with a guild, it's something that I'm sure many people that have been through the cycle of getting guilds and haven't been lucky enough to get a guild like, say, Asmongold's Indestructible, where they they go through hardships, but the guild still stays together for the most part. Whereas I've seen so many guilds, even over the last couple, just the last two guilds I've been in, have completely fallen apart because of the choices that the guild master has made. And it's choices that, if these were made in a time when people were accountable for their actions, they wouldn't have done. So, to get back onto the topic of Asmongold, I I honestly think it's sad that he gets portrayed in the light that he does as a hater, because while I definitely like Bellular and I think he does great work, I find mostly because of the position he's in as someone who's supposed to take an objective, non-biased stance on the news that's coming out about World of Warcraft. He's too diplomatic in some respects, and mostly caused by his channel, to be able to really address in an honest way the issues that the community's been having. And I think that's where Asmongold plays a much more crucial role, where because he's supported by viewers, he's able to actually take a stance against the bad decisions that Blizzard has been making. Because the thing I worry about with, the folding of Heroes, or, the effect that, because I'm definitely not as versed in a lot of the news as a lot of other YouTubers are, but the posts that they've made about Heroes of the Storm, um, about Hearthstone, um, the changes that WoW has gone through, it seems like they've fundamentally shifted the game from being a difficult but rewarding game to a very, very easy game to play. So now they need to find that place to put challenge in. I've been playing, like, I shelled out the money to play the classic demo because I was interested to see what Blizzard had to, the work that they were doing on it, because um I started playing in BC, so I was too young to fully experience what World of Warcraft was like when it was in its golden years. So that's where I've tried private servers. But no matter how Blizz-like the servers are, typically there's some inconsistencies because, no matter how much work and admittedly great work that the people who make these private servers put in to get the games in a stable running way for people to play for free, they still can't get to that level that a professional company like Blizzard, that's known for their polish, can still get to. There's also the issue that, um, when playing the private server, in the back of my mind at least, is the fact that at any time Blizzard can take legal action against the server and you lose all the things you've worked for. Now, you can argue that in the retail WoW, you're still just working towards nothing because you're just um, paying for the ability to play a character that you don't own with items that you don't own. And at any time, Blizzard can revoke your ability to play their game entirely, effectively wasting all of the time and money that you've spent getting your character to the point that it's at. Um, and in all honesty, with the announce of Classic WoW and me seeing that, they really are making Classic WoW, at this point, I'm now feeling towards retail WoW the way I felt towards private servers. The way, what I mean by that is that now, with what they've done with removing tier sets, with making Azerite armor, with the importance of Mythic Plus, and how you're constantly on a treadmill to get the same gear that you've gotten but at a better item level, there's no longer any point to even being on the gear treadmill. At at the very that's where WoW was better off in the previous expansions, because at the very least it wasn't in your direct mind, the pointlessness of the gear treadmill, because you could at least go, well, all my work's going to be for nothing, yes, at the end of the expansion, but at least the upside to that is that there's a new expansion coming, there's new gear, there's new content, there's new raids. So yes, I'm losing these best in slots or these things that I've really worked towards and really wanted to get, because now they're completely invalid with the new expansion. But there was the balance of it being a new expansion. Nowadays, what is the point to doing Mythic Plus? Or what? I guess first off, what's the point of doing raiding if you can get competitive, if not better, gear in Mythic Plus? Like, for example, I'm using Mythic Plus pieces. Well, essentially Mythic Plus. This would have come from, I think this came from one of the Azerite chests. I got really lucky. But even then, like, it doesn't matter. I don't care because I know at 8.2, which I'm seeing 8.2 is going to be the savior of WoW. Well, how do I know it's, I'm not going to be sitting here in 8.2 in 4 months with a soul spun cask that's mythic level 15, item level whatever, but it's the same item. Like there's no change. I don't care anymore because like this means nothing. Like none of these mean anything anymore because it's the gear treadmill's gotten so bad that it's like you can't even get off to take a break. That's what you want. Could you imagine that? Like you finally get your full plus 15. It's like, well, now I gotta farm to get, with the Titan forging a lot. Now I gotta farm to get like a gem slot on it, or to get like you're never going to get to a point where it's like I got. I'm trying to think of an item that would be like an example of that. Because that was really bad. I know I'll have to go back to like the Wrath the Lich King. Like I remember when I got Bryn Troll the Bone Arbiter. Like you get that, and I don't think I got another weapon because I was like, this is it. This is what Wrath of the Lich King has, come. This is where my character's essentially final progress is until I get maybe the heroic version of the weapon. Is that's the weapon I wanted, and you felt accomplished when you got it. But now there's nothing, and really, with Classic coming out, you're like, well, retail World of Warcraft's a giant waste of time. I know most people are saying, you know, Classic WoW's going to come out, there's going to be the boom, it's going to spike, and then it's going to go down, and then it's going to essentially like plateau. And I agree more with Tips Out, where it's going to plateau and then slowly raise until it overcomes retail WoW. Because just playing on private servers, I just really want to play Classic WoW now because that is World of Warcraft. This game that we're playing here, this is no longer World of Warcraft. This is some action RPG Destiny style game where like the items don't matter at all. Like to me, the final nail in the coffin really was I really enjoyed getting the artifact weapons, and the different content that they allowed with them, the different looks that you could get with the artifact weapons. There was a sense of maybe not progression towards an ultimate gear item level, but there was a progression towards like an ultimate looks level, like looks maxing to use a word, because you could go, okay, I want this weapon and color scheme for this axe. And I remember looking it up and being like, how do I get that axe? How do I work towards it? And then how do I work towards getting the color scheme that I want? To me, and this is where I'm not really all that invested, because I was hoping that even with the gear treadmill, that's kind of a given at this point with World of Warcraft. I was hoping the story would at least pick up the slack, but it didn't. And I think the best example of like the World of Warcraft story being, as of right now, like a going up and up and up with stakes, and then just completely plummeting in their use of them is the cutscene from the end of Siege of Borealis. It epitomizes it so well, where it does an amazing job. Like the team that does the cutscenes is amazing, but it's just how much of a letdown that cutscene was. You get you just beat this really hard dungeon. Like when I first cleared it, it was hard. There was a lot of wipes because you were still learning the fights, and Mythic was an interesting difficulty when it's brand new to the expansion. You were doing it in like the first like week or two. because people didn't know the fights. And you get to that cutscene, and this is what it's all been working towards. You know, Jaina's mother gives her the pendant, and she calls the fleets in, and the music swells, and you see the fleets coming, and they're like, "Yeah, it's amazing." And then just immediately, Lady Ashman gives up the forfeit flag, and nothing happens. And it's like there's no point to the cutscene because, like, what could you imagine if in the Wrathgate, like the Horde Alliance, they start working together, and then the Lich King comes out of the door and goes, "I give up," and then the Horde Alliance are just sitting there like, "Okay, well, I guess we just like go back to Dalaran and sit around because like that was completely anticlimactic." Like it's that's becoming the story. Like there was nothing in 8.0. We decided to go into some random containment field where they pulled out an old god out of their ass that wasn't even interesting. Like I'm I'm one of the few people that really enjoys the old god lore. I'm a big fan of H.P. Lovecraft, and even I was like, who cares about Cahoon? Like for the whole last couple expansions, there's been like the argument like, is there this many old gods, or is there this many? This book says there's this many, whereas books that were written in the game, like I think it's the Ordering of Azeroth, says that there's this many. Well, now who the fuck cares? Because they can just like add an old god, because like, oh look, they just created Gahoon, so like, you know, what stakes did Gahoon have? Like you just literally they made him up, and then we defeat him. So like at least the Emerald Nightmare, well, not being actually no, Emerald Nightmare was a much more interesting raid than Aldir was, and they didn't even they didn't even need to bring out an old god. Like you just fight Xavius. But anyway, now everyone's excited for Najatar, and I'm worried that Najatar is just going to be a throwaway content that is just going to be in the world no one's going to care about. Like it's going to be like Argus. Like Argus is a very interesting place lore wise, and I don't imagine anybody's touching that planet now that we're off Legion. The only people I could feasibly see who are doing that are people who either want the transmog set for the items, or they're still working on the rep and they really want the Lightforged Draenei or the Void Elves, or like those allied races. Other than that, there's no incentive to go back and explore Argus and see what it has to offer. Like it's it's kind of a waste of it, really, because Argus was like a huge thing. That's the home of the Draenei, and like you could have made Argus into like Outland 2, but they decided no, it's just gonna be some random patch where oh look, let me see how you get to Argus. Broken Eye, yeah, you go there and it's like there's Argus. Like you know, it doesn't matter. It matters so little that you don't even see it in the overworld like planet stuff. Which, in all honesty, this doesn't even make sense because like why the fuck is Draenor there, and Outland there? Because like this is our Earth. Outland is in space, but Draenor's not in space between Azeroth and Outland. It's in a completely different timeline. So why they showed Draenor in the overworld like world map, but yet they don't show Argus, which is actually in our timeline and actually in our space, it's kind of dumb. But that's neither here nor there. It kind of goes to show the overall lack of continuity in this game. Like the thing I wanted to say about raiding is to get after after kind of going off on a tangent, to get back to Asmongold again. I really agree with his point about how difficult raidings become. Um, it basically became a chore where the poor raid leader is not only responsible to like make sure everyone gets there on time and whatnot, which from my experience is a hard enough job. Like holy shit, if you're working in a raid and you have everyone showing up on time and you're actually pulling bosses at the time when the raid's supposed to start, your guild's probably already much better organized than like 90% of the guilds out there. Usually people start logging on when the raid starts, and then you're 30 to 45 minutes after the fact is when you're in the dungeon. But the issue is that they've made the game so easy to play and like survive that there was the balance in vanilla that they didn't need to have 15 difficulties of raid, because the game was difficult enough that just adding simple mechanics and whatnot, just the fundamental of the mechanics of the game, like threat, like controlling the amount of DPS you do so you don't overpull and get one shot by the boss, and then the tanks are scrambling to get aggro back. Like there was those kind of mechanics that added nuance to the game that didn't require the raids to have 15 million different mechanics. Um, like in all honesty, it burns out the average guild. Like my guild, we were progressing through. Let me bring up my armory here just to kind of go into a little bit of my backstory. As far as in Nighthold, when I was in, this was back when I was on Moonguard. We were progressing normal, and we killed normal Gul'dan, and there seems to be a disconnect with a lot of raiding guilds where they think that because they killed the boss or cleared the raid on normal once, they are ultimately ready to do the full raid on heroic. Now, on normal, you can take a lot of liberties, and there's a lot of things like you can have the top DPS essentially just completely carry people that are not doing anywhere near the DPS they need to. When you get into heroic, and especially I imagine mythic, that's when you need to have a raid leader that is able to be assertive enough to make people sit and go, look, you're not doing enough DPS. You need to sit out of this raid until you improve yourself. And I understand that there are people in the forums that would argue that that's elitist, that that's exclusionary. But by being excluded in that way, it's not bullying, it's creating a drive to make you want to improve. If you're taken in every single raid and you never make any effort to improve, your logs are always like gray, like 1% or whatnot, but the guild never does anything to sit you out or to sit you down and talk to you or make, you know, let you know that, okay, this isn't acceptable. If you want to continue raiding, you need to work on improving yourself. There's not, the person's not going to internally look and go, I want to improve myself. Typically, the people that are willing to look at their DPS and want to thrive and see themselves on the top of the chart, those aren't the ones you got to talk to about the rest of the raid carrying them, unless they're, you know, poorly geared, and then that just comes down to a matter of time until, you know, they get the appropriate gear. But I've seen so many guilds that would rather completely quit raiding than sit players because it's too much stress. It's too much stress to tell the person, look, you're not good enough, because then that opens a whole can of worms. It creates internal guild drama. And, you know, this is a guild that we did heroic raiding through, you know, Nighthold, through Tuma Sargeras, through Antorus, and yet when we're doing Aldir, which I would argue is, I don't know if it would be harder than those fights. I would say that the fights were a lot more tedious. I remember when we were first going through normal, and we were getting the taste of the new raid, and we're saying, oh, this raid looks great and whatnot. And I remember piping up and saying, I disagree. None of these fights are really that interesting, save for a couple. But we're going to get really tired of them. And what happened? Well, we cleared it on normal. We got one Gahoon kill, decided to start progressing on heroic. And the fights were just so tedious with the amount of things you have to do. And people getting frustrated because if one person makes a mistake, it could cause a wipe. Like, for example, on Zek Voss, if you have someone that's very slow with the I-beams, you can end up wiping the entire raid right there. And it got to the point where we had just managed to kill Zool. Actually, no, we were progressing Zool. I didn't kill Zool until I was with this new guild. We were just progressing Zool, And the guild leaders just decided to completely take the guild bank and leave because it was too much stress. They just ghosted the entire guild. Um, one late night, they just cleared the guild bank, kicked everyone, and then just transferred servers. And of course, some of the raiders that found this to be unfair, which I would agree with, they decided to find the guild masters. And I mean, this is, I wouldn't condone this, but they would, I can understand where the people would feel justified doing this, where they would start harassing them on this new server. And the people that harassed, they obviously got reported by the GM and banned. So it's like, not only is the ability to blacklist and the ability to make people responsible for their actions is gone, but now Blizzard incentivizes people to do that because they'll, what's to stop me now from creating a guild, creating some kind of pyramid scheme where I get people to, to raid with me and put all the consumables in the guild bank and whatnot. Wait till everyone's, comfortable, the guild bank's full and whatnot, and then, wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, steal everything and leave. The people don't have any recourse. I can just move to a different server and faction change, and blacklisting's no longer a thing, and I could just do it again there. And you could do it again and again and again and again, and there's no punishment for it anymore. So now people are getting so fed up that so many guilds are falling apart that what's the point of even playing this game anymore? I can personally attest that, after that, the entire rating guild, sorry, the entire rating team quit the game because it was already a struggle with the small amount of content that this game even has right now to keep an interest. I would argue that most of the people that are still playing the game is solely based on the social aspect, and they are just the few people that are lucky enough to have a guild that they're able to interact with on a daily basis. I mean, people have shown any game is more fun with friends. I played Fallout 76 to level 50 with my friend. Would I have done that if I was playing it alone? Possibly. Fallout 76 is a good game to pay no attention to and watch in the background, but I probably would have just given up because, like, really, you'd get bored of the game after a while, and if I really wanted to play that style of game, I could just go back to Fallout 4 and then I wouldn't have to worry about other people. But this video isn't about Fallout 76. So that's where people are just realizing there's nothing keeping people in this game anymore. I I don't, like, as someone who, I was never a very good raider, but I could call myself a raider. Well, you took out tier sets and you replaced it with these things, which, why did you even remove the artifact weapons in the first place if you were going to just add it? And I would argue the whole ending of Legion was kind of silly. It would have been more appropriate, instead of having Sargeras stab the world, which, like, 8.2 is coming and we don't really see any mention of that mattering at all. In this whole 8.0 and 8.1, we haven't cared about the world being stabbed by a giant sword whatsoever. It's like, whatever, it's just kind of sitting there now. So that kind of deflates any tension that the sword being stabbed in Azeroth made. All it did was created a plot MacGuffin, so that way they'd have the ability to take away the artifact weapons and still add the exact same systems of grinding, except now, instead of grinding towards something that maybe you're interested in, like leveling up your Ashbringer or leveling up, the Windrunner bow, you're leveling up this thing. The Who cares? Just a regular necklace. Like, I cared more about Prydaz than I care about this thing. Um, Whereas it would have been better in the story if, after Legion, we're all sitting there with these super powerful artifacts of legend, and then Sylvanas decides, okay, this is the time to attack the Alliance because all of my heroes of the Horde have these incredibly powerful weapons. Like, you could have had the same story, have Sylvanas burn down the World Tree and whatnot, but and like, who knows? I mean, I'm not a very good story writer, but incorporate in a way that we still have the artifacts, and then you could have still had the artifact power system. Maybe maybe they could have made it so instead of completely deactivating it, and instead of having the relic system, which I would argue is not the best system either, instead make it so that way you have talent trees per spec in the items. Like maybe make it so instead of each individual relic, you have 3 talent trees for each spec, have them balanced in a way that makes it neat. Like playing classic, talent trees were one of the backbone systems of the game, and this right, let me see, that's dungeon talent. This doesn't make up for it. This is nothing. Like if anything, half of these things, they're basically things that got taken away from us and then given back to us in a completely watered down form that's frankly disgusting compared to what we used to have. And that's where it's it's getting to the point where I'm definitely going to just completely quit retail for Classic WoW because this isn't the game I fell in love with. This isn't the game that I grew up playing. This isn't the game that I spent hours and hours a day causing my parents to think I'm addicted. This is the game where I have to struggle to find a reason to even log in because I don't care about Island Expeditions. I don't care about Mythic Plus. It's the same dungeon over and over and over and over again, except you're now instead of, cruising through it, which used to be the the benefit of having a ton of gear is that, for example, when you were playing Legion and you wanted to go back to the normal dungeons, you could just steamroll them. Well, now it's, what fun is it to do a dungeon you've done 50 times before, but now when you mess up that one mechanic, it one shots you, and then your group yells at you. Like where's the fun in that? There isn't any. So my main concern now is with all the news with Blizzard and what's been going on is that Blizzard's gonna take such a financial hit that they won't be in a state where financially they can release Classic WoW. And that's what I worry about because I Classic WoW is what I'm waiting for. I'm going to full on switch to it. I'm not going to play retail anymore. I'm going to boycott it. This isn't the game anymore. I I don't care that, you know, I can walk up to the average enemy and I can use like 15 million abilities and, just blood boil and all this. Like, who cares about this? As if you're able to spam these abilities this much, each individual choice you make does not matter. That's the difference between classic World of Warcraft and current World of Warcraft. Is the combat was slow enough that the individual moves you made while fighting an enemy made a difference. And if you were in a tough situation where maybe you just fought 3 enemies and you were expecting to get out of combat to eat, which when was the last time I've ever needed to go out of combat and eat other than when I pull 50 billion mobs and I have no problem popping cooldowns and killing them all, and then I just don't want to wait for my normal health regen. It's, in classic World of Warcraft, you'd be fighting for your life and the choices you would make would actually determine, are you going to die to this mob or are you going to get out with this, by the skin of your teeth? And that made you a better player because if you died, the punishment was walking back from the graveyard. And the more times you walk back from the graveyard, the more that pushed you to be like, I don't want to make this walk again. This is annoying. This takes me out of the game. I'm gonna be better so that way that kobold doesn't kill me next time, or that Defias pillager doesn't kill me next time. I'm gonna run up and interrupt him because I realize that fireball takes 2 seconds to cast, but it takes a third of my health. You're able to put those two and two together, whereas now it doesn't matter if you get hit by a spell. Who cares? It does the same amount of damage as a melee attack, even with them changing the spell resistances. Like and everything as you level is so homogenized that I could just hearth back, go to Tear Guard Sound, go here, and it's the exact same as if I were to go here, or if I were to go on this island, or if I were to go, like, it doesn't matter anymore. Whereas there was the progression in Classic WoW where it's like, I want to go to this area and I want to explore it, but I'm not strong enough yet. So when I become strong enough, I'm going to explore the Burning Steeps. I imagine there's probably a decent amount of players that when they were leveling through Red Ridge and they saw that path towards the Burning Steeps and they explored it a bit and it kicked their ass, they were like, I'm going to come back there one day and I'm going to see what's behind that crevice and I'm going to explore that burning landscape. And that's gone now. And the it's a shame. It's it's kind of a sad thing when with World of Warcraft, it's basically, and this is where I really I I, I think I'm jealous of people whose childhood nostalgic childhood game is like Majora's Mask or Ocarina of Time or Halo 1 or Time Splitters Future Perfect or any of those games, because you can pop that game in and you could play it and it's still that game. Whereas us World of Warcraft players have been tortured over the last few years as we've watched the game that we love morph into something that is not even remotely the same as what we began playing. And as more people rejoin, or not rejoin, but join in the later expansions and fall in love with what the game is now, we realize they're never going to course correct the retail version of the game to make it what it was. I remember when they took away talent trees with the pre-patch for MOP, I it fundamentally destroyed my Warlock. I never played Affliction again. I never played my Warlock again because I remember in in Cataclysm, I was struggling with my Warlock and I joined a random Tol Barad group on the server and we were killing a boss, and I remember someone whispering me and saying, "Hey, instead of using Rain of Fire, use Hellfire because it at the time, it did more damage." And I remember asking him, "Can you sit me down and show me how to play Warlock because I'm not fully grasping it?" And it turned out he was the top Warlock on the server, and he sat down with me and went over my class and spec and how I could do rotation. And thanks to his teachings, and I remember his name, it was Cinnabuns on Moonguard. I wonder if he even still plays. Let me look that up while I talk. But anyway, that never happens now. If you try your best to kind of say, hey, maybe you should do it like this, you're viewed as an elitist. You're viewed as someone who puts people down. Cinnabon guard. Why don't I look it up on the thing I already have open? But anyway, like there's no incentive to improve. There's no incentive to make friends with people. And Blizzard did this to themselves. And they've gotten to a point with the amount of new players, they can't change it. They can't go back to how it was. And Classic is frankly probably 2 or 3 expansions too late. I know people will rejoin and people will play Classic, but they frankly should have addressed that much sooner. I would say that they should have, when they changed the world with Cataclysm, they should have released the Classic servers, because at that point, it wasn't the same game. The world was different, so, and people didn't have the option to go back and play the old Classic quests. So that's my rant. Um, I really struggle these days to find any reason to log in. I've joined another guild that's a raiding guild, but then it gets to the point where what's the point of socially interacting and making friendships with these people, because they're just gonna fall apart. If maybe if you watch Asmongold, hit me up and I'll transfer over to Indestructible, because I'm sick and tired of these guilds that fall apart and then there's no incentive to meet new people, because after a while of meeting people, getting friends, falling apart, and then you never talking to them again, it psychologically affects someone in a way that they essentially get borderline personality disorder in the game because they're just afraid of making connections with people that are just going to be completely torn apart by the drama in the game, and people quitting the game because there's nothing to do. Like, there's that picture. Let's see. Craft. Trying to remember. Ironforge. Guild photo. Before and after. Please let this be. Yes! Oh, thank you. This is the best picture from Reddit, and this explains World of Warcraft so well. And this is Miss Pandaria. Like, this is a picture right here. This is the problem with the game. People are leaving and they're not returning, and this was 7 years ago. Like, this guy's probably not even playing at this point. Like, they should almost make a third one where it's 2019 and it's just fucking empty. So, I know I don't get a lot of viewers. I hope maybe Asmongold comes across this, because it'd be interesting to have a conversation with him about this, because I'm sure he would agree, it's so disheartening to see the game that you grew up and loved be destroyed like this in front of your very eyes. And we have no recourse, because if we were to say boycott World of Warcraft and say every one of Asmongold's viewers stop playing the game right now, cancel your subscription, and just, we're going to boycott it until they change it and they correct the game, you know what's going to happen? It's only going to affect the small developers, because publishers use developers as a shield, and they're going to be the ones that end up losing the job. And then what's going to happen is Blizzard's going to say, people aren't interested in World of Warcraft, so there's no point in releasing classic World of Warcraft, so we're going to cancel that. So we're basically being held hostage, because if we take any action against Blizzard, they're just going to remove the one thing that we have to look forward to left. So I just wanted to talk about this, kind of speak my mind. I know I don't really make very many videos. It's more of a hobby for me. And my last one was a lot more positive with the Daughters of Ash. Which, by the way, Asmongold, you should really play that mod, because hopefully it's going to come out with the remaster, and it's really good. It makes the game really hard, and it basically makes it like a new Souls game. So after you play Dark Souls 3, you should probably play the Daughters of Ash mod when it comes out on remaster. But I don't have anything positive to say about World of Warcraft anymore. All I can really say is that because of my addiction, I still keep coming back to this game, and it's really sad. But I hope you guys, if you do play World of Warcraft, you're able to find fun in the game, and you're in a good guild where you have the social outlet where you can interact with people and still have fun. So I thank you guys for taking the time. It's going to be a longer video, but I definitely appreciate the views. And Asmongold, if you watch this, I definitely thank you, and know that I definitely will be watching the stream highlights if I end up seeing it, because I don't watch very many streamers. But if I did, maybe I'll make the effort to watch your stream and Twitch Prime me, because you definitely deserve it. You've done a lot of good work addressing these and bringing these to light, because if everybody had the same attitude of that guy that I watched who called you toxic, then Blizzard would think they're justified in the changes they've been making in the game, and they would never do any course correction. We need people like you who speak their mind and are honest and true about the game to slap Blizzard across the face and go, look what you're doing to this game that we all love. So I thank you for watching. I hope you guys have a great day.